The first thing I saw after waking up from my pregnancy checkup wasn't my baby's ultrasound photo. It was a handwritten letter with my husband's name on it, and 3 words that made my entire body go cold. You deserve the truth. I found that letter hidden beneath a loose, wooden panel in my mother-in-law's house, a house where I had spent every Christmas, a house where my husband had grown up, a house where everyone smiled at me like I was already part of their family. But the person who wrote that letter had been dead for 12 years, and the secret inside it wasn't about money. It wasn't about an affair. It was something much worse. Because it meant the family I was about to bring my child into was built on a lie. And the worst part? My husband already knew something was wrong. My name is Elara Whitmore, and before everything fell apart, I honestly believed I had the kind of life people secretly wished they had. I was 31 years old, worked as a graphic designer from home, and had been married to my husband, Cassian Vale, for almost 4 years. Cassian was the kind of man strangers immediately trusted. He remembered birthdays. He held doors open. He always called his grandmother every Sunday. He had a calm voice that made people feel safe. But there was one thing about Cassian that even I noticed from the beginning. He hated talking about his childhood. Whenever I asked him about growing up, his answers were always short. Nothing interesting happened. My family was normal. Can we talk about something else? At first, I thought he was just private. Everyone had things they didn't like sharing. I had my own insecurities. For example, I had a terrible habit of pretending I wasn't hurt when I actually was. I smiled when people disappointed me. I said it's fine when it wasn't, and sometimes I stayed silent because I was afraid that asking too many questions would make people leave. That weakness followed me into my marriage, and maybe that was why I ignored the warning signs for so long, because I wanted my perfect family more than I wanted the truth. When I found out I was pregnant, Cassian cried. Not the dramatic kind of crying you see in movies, just quiet tears. He sat on the bathroom floor holding the pregnancy test in his hands, staring at those 2 lines like they were the most valuable thing he had ever seen. We're going to be parents, he whispered. I laughed through my tears. We are. For the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes that looked like peace. But that happiness lasted only a few weeks, because when we told his family the news, something strange happened. Something I couldn't explain, something that made me wonder if I had just walked into a room where everyone knew a secret except me. Cassian's mother, Seraphina Vale, had always been warm toward me. She was elegant, intelligent, and the kind of woman who made every room feel smaller when she entered. She owned an antique jewelry business and lived alone in the old Vale family house outside the city. When she heard about the pregnancy, she hugged me tightly. My grandchild, she whispered. But then she pulled away. And for 1 second, just 1 second, her smile disappeared. You're keeping the baby safe, aren't you? She asked. I laughed awkwardly. Of course. No stress? No stress. No unexpected surprises? Her question confused me. What do you mean? She looked at Cassian, not at me, at him, and something passed between them. A silent conversation. One I wasn't invited into. Cassian immediately changed the subject. That night, while we drove home, I asked him, "What was that about?" "What?" "Your mom, the way she looked at you." He kept his eyes on the road. "She worries too much." "That's all?" "Yes." But his answer came too quickly, and I noticed something else. His hand tightened around the steering wheel. A week later, I started noticing small things that would have meant nothing to anyone else. But once you know something is wrong, every little detail starts feeling like a clue. Cassian began receiving phone calls late at night. He would walk into another room to answer them. When I asked who it was, he always said, "Work." But Cassian worked in finance, and I knew his work schedule. There were no emergency meetings at midnight, no reason to whisper, no reason to delete messages. One night, I saw his phone light up on the kitchen counter. A message appeared. I didn't mean to read it. I really didn't. But the first line was impossible to ignore. "She cannot know what happened before the wedding." My heart stopped. Before the wedding, what happened before the wedding, and who was she? When Cassian came back into the kitchen, I was holding his phone. He froze. For the first time since I met him. My husband looked afraid of me. "What is this?" I asked. He slowly took the phone from my hand. "Elara." "No. Don't say my name like that. Just answer." His face changed. Not angry, not defensive. Guilty. "I can explain." Those 4 words hurt more than the message itself, because people only say, "I can explain," when there is something they don't want you to know. "What happened before our wedding?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I need time." Time. That was his answer. But I was carrying his child. And suddenly, I felt like I was the only person in our marriage who didn't know the rules. The next morning, Cassian left early for work. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the ultrasound photo. A tiny image of our baby. A future I was supposed to be excited about. Instead, I felt like I was holding evidence from a crime scene. That afternoon, I drove to Serafina's house. I didn't plan to confront her. I told myself I just needed answers. But when she opened the door and saw my face, she already knew. "You found something," she said. I felt a chill. "How did you know?" She stepped aside and let me enter. The house smelled exactly like it always did. Lavender, old books, wood polish, a place that felt safe. Until that moment. "Because I was waiting for this day," she whispered. My stomach tightened. Waiting for what day? Serafina looked toward the staircase. Then she said something I never expected. "The day you finally realized Cassian isn't the person you think he is." I couldn't breathe. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward an old cabinet near the living room wall. She opened a drawer and removed a small brass key. I should have destroyed this years ago. My heart started racing. "What is it?" "A door." "A door to what?" She looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. "A part of this family that was supposed to stay buried." She took me upstairs, past old family portraits, past photographs of Cassian as a child, past a hallway I had never entered before. At the end was a small room, locked. Dust covered the door, but someone had recently tried to open it. The scratches around the lock were fresh. I noticed them immediately. "Someone has been here." Serafina looked away. "Yes." "Who?" Her silence was the answer. Someone in the family had already been searching for whatever was hidden inside. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. The secret wasn't just old, someone was still protecting it. Serafina unlocked the door. Inside was a small room filled with boxes, old documents, photographs, letters, a lifetime of things someone wanted forgotten. She walked to the corner and moved aside an old wooden board. Underneath was a hidden compartment. My hands became cold. Inside was one envelope. My name was written on it. Not Serafina's, not Cassian's, mine. "Elara Whitmore." I looked at her. "How does someone who died 12 years ago know my name?" Serafina's face turned pale, and then she said the sentence that changed everything. "Because the person who wrote this letter knew you would marry Cassian before you ever met him." I stared at my name written on that old envelope for almost a full minute, not because I didn't recognize the handwriting, because I did. The letters were elegant, slightly tilted to the right, the same handwriting I had seen every Christmas, on birthday cards, on thank you notes, on the small messages Serafina Vale left beside homemade desserts whenever I visited her. My mother-in-law's handwriting, but that was impossible. The envelope looked old. The paper had yellowed. The edges were damaged by time. And yet my name was written clearly across the front. Elara Whitmore, not Mrs. Vale, not Cassian's wife. My name, as if someone had known exactly who I would become. I looked at Serafina. "Did you write this?" Her face changed immediately. Not surprise. Fear. And that scared me more than anything, because people don't look afraid when they're caught lying. They look afraid when they know the truth is much worse. "I didn't write that," she whispered. My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Then who did?" Serafina didn't answer. She walked to the window and stared outside. For a woman who always seemed in control, she suddenly looked exhausted. Older, like she had been carrying a heavy weight for years. "Your husband knows about this room," she finally said. The words hit me harder than I expected. "What?" "He knows it exists." I felt my stomach twist. "Then why did he pretend he didn't?" Serafina closed her eyes. "Because Cassian has spent his entire life trying to protect people." "Protect them from what?" She looked back at me. From himself? That answer made no sense. And somehow it made perfect sense. Because I had always noticed something strange about Cassian. He was kind. Almost too kind. He apologized even when someone else hurt him. He avoided arguments. He carried everyone's problems like they were his responsibility. I used to think it was one of the things I loved about him. Now I wondered if kindness had been his way of hiding something. A person who spends their whole life protecting secrets eventually becomes one. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to read it. Some part of me believed that once I saw the words, my old life would disappear. But I unfolded it anyway. The letter began, "Dear Elara, if you are reading this, then Cassian finally chose silence over honesty." My breath caught. I looked at Serafina. She looked away. I continued, "You need to understand something. Cassian is not the villain in this story, but he is not innocent either." My heart started beating faster. The mistake that destroyed our family happened 20 years ago. Everyone believes they know what happened. They don't. I swallowed. 20 years. Before I even knew Cassian existed. Before I was part of this family. The person who told you the truth first will probably be the person you trust the least. I stopped reading. A cold feeling moved through me. Because I already knew what that meant. Someone in this family was lying, but someone else was pretending to tell the truth. Suddenly, a sound came from downstairs. A door closing. Serafina froze. "Someone's here." I turned toward the hallway. "Who?" Her expression changed. "Cassian." My heart dropped. "What is he doing here?" She didn't answer. Because both of us knew. He wasn't here by accident. We heard his footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Heavy. Like he already knew what he was walking into. Cassian appeared in the doorway. The moment he saw the letter in my hand, all the color disappeared from his face. "Elara?" I stood up. "Were you going to tell me?" He didn't respond. That was enough. "You knew about this." His silence became louder than any confession. "I asked you what happened before our wedding," I said. My voice started shaking. "And you lied." Cassian rubbed his face. "I didn't lie." I laughed, not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe he was saying that. "You hid the truth. There's a difference. Not when I'm the person being kept in the dark." For the first time, Cassian looked angry, not at me, at himself. "You don't understand." "Then explain." He looked at Serafina. She nodded slightly, like she was giving him permission, and that made me even more suspicious. Why did my husband need his mother's permission to tell me the truth? "I was 19, Cassian said quietly. I waited. "My older brother Lucian died." I frowned. "Older brother?" I had never heard that name, not once. "I thought you were an only child." "I know." The room went silent. Because suddenly, the secret wasn't just about something that happened. It was about someone who had been erased. Cassian sat down. His hands were trembling. "Lucian was everything my father wanted me to be." What does that mean? He was confident, successful. Everyone loved him. "And you?" Cassian smiled sadly. I was the disappointment. That sentence surprised me. Because I had never seen Cassian as someone who felt inferior. But maybe the people who seem strongest are often the ones who have spent years pretending. My father and Lucian fought the night he died. Cassian continued. About what? Cassian looked at the letter. About the family business. I waited, but he didn't continue. What happened? His jaw tightened. Lucian discovered something. What? He looked at me. Something was hidden in his eyes. Something painful. He found out our father had been hiding money. I exhaled. Money. At first, I felt almost relieved. A financial secret. A family business problem. Something understandable, but then Cassian added, not his own money. My blood ran cold. Whose money? Cassian didn't answer. Serafina did. An inheritance. The room became silent. Whose inheritance? Serafina's eyes filled with tears. Your husband's. I stared at her. What? Cassian looked down. My father wasn't my biological father. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't. I felt like the floor had moved beneath me. You're saying I was adopted? My mouth opened, but no words came. 4 years of marriage. 4 years sleeping beside someone. 4 years believing I knew his family. And suddenly, I realized I didn't even know the most basic truth about my husband. But why hide that? Cassian looked toward the old room. Because Lucian found out who my real father was. Who? He hesitated. Then he said, a man who was supposed to be dead. I felt a chill. Supposed to be? Cassian nodded. Everyone believed he died before I was born. Everyone except who? His eyes moved toward Serafina. And for the first time, I saw something between them. Not guilt, not fear. Something worse. A shared secret. Before I could ask another question, my phone rang. I looked down. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A woman's voice spoke immediately. Is this Elara Whitmore? Yes. Good. I was afraid I was too late. Who is this? A pause, then, my name is Nadia Vale. My entire body froze. Vale. Another Vale. I'm sorry, I said. There's no Nadia in the family. The woman laughed quietly. A sad laugh. Yes, there is. My fingers tightened around the phone. Who are you? Her answer destroyed the last piece of certainty I had. I'm Cassian's biological sister. I looked at my husband. His face went completely white, because he knew that voice, and he knew exactly what she was about to reveal. I need you to listen carefully, Elara, Nadia whispered. Your husband has spent years believing a lie. I couldn't speak. And your mother-in-law knows the truth. Serafina stepped closer. Hang up. Her voice was urgent, almost desperate. But I didn't move, because Nadia said one final sentence before the call ended. Cassian wasn't adopted because someone wanted to save him. A pause. He was adopted because someone wanted to hide what he was. The call disconnected, and standing there, surrounded by the secrets of a family I thought I knew, I realized something terrifying. The letter wasn't warning me about my husband. It was warning me about everyone who raised him. For several seconds after the call ended, nobody moved. Not me, not Cassian, not Serafina. It felt like the entire house was holding its breath. I looked at my husband, the man who had held my hand when we found out we were having a baby, the man who used to kiss my forehead before falling asleep, the man I believed I knew better than anyone, and yet, standing in that old room surrounded by forgotten documents and hidden letters, he looked like a stranger. Cassian? I whispered. But he didn't answer. Because for the first time in our marriage, my husband had no explanation ready, no comforting words, no way to make everything okay, and that scared me more than the secrets themselves. Tell me the truth, I said. My voice was quiet, but even I could hear the pain behind it. Cassian looked at the floor. I thought I was protecting you. That's what everyone says when they decide I don't deserve the truth. The words hurt him. I could see it. And part of me hated that, because Cassian wasn't a cruel man. That was the hardest part. If he had been heartless, leaving would have been easy, but he wasn't. He was a good person who had made terrible choices, and sometimes those are the people who hurt us the most. Serafina sat down slowly. I need to tell you everything. I looked at her. Why now? She wiped a tear from her cheek. Because you were going to have a child, and I realized I was about to let another generation grow up surrounded by lies. That was the first honest thing she had said to me, and somehow it made me angrier. Why didn't you tell Cassian the truth? She looked at her son. Because I was afraid. Cassian looked up. Afraid of what? Serafina's voice broke. Of losing you. Then she finally told us the story. 27 years earlier, Serafina had been married to a wealthy businessman named Alistair Vale. Everyone knew him as a powerful man, a respected man, a generous man. But behind closed doors, he was controlling and ruthless. Serafina had a daughter from a previous relationship, Nadia. But Alistair never accepted her. He wanted a perfect family, a perfect name, a perfect legacy. When Serafina became pregnant with Cassian, Alistair discovered something that changed everything. Cassian wasn't his biological son. The truth was that Serafina had been in love with another man before her marriage, a man named Evander Cross. And when Alistair discovered the truth, he didn't leave. He did something much worse. He made sure nobody ever found out. Your father knew, Serafina said to Cassian. Cassian looked shocked. What? Alistair knew you weren't his son. Then why did he raise me? Serafina's eyes filled with regret. Because he saw an opportunity. My stomach tightened. What opportunity? She looked at me. Money. And suddenly the inheritance made sense. Evander Cross had been the owner of a massive investment company. When he died, his will contained one unusual condition. His fortune would only go to his biological children. Alistair discovered this, and instead of telling the truth, he created a plan. He adopted Cassian legally, raised him as a Vale, and waited. Because if Cassian ever discovered his real identity, he could claim the inheritance. But Alistair wanted control of that money, so he kept the truth hidden, even from Cassian himself. But Lucian knew, Cassian whispered. Serafina nodded. Yes. Before he died? Yes. The room became silent. I remembered the letter, the mistake that destroyed the family. Everyone believes they know what happened. They don't. Lucian found the documents, Serafina explained. He discovered Cassian was Evander Cross's son. Why didn't he tell me? Her expression changed, because that was the question nobody wanted to answer. Because Lucian wasn't trying to hurt you? Then what was he doing? Serafina looked away. He was trying to expose Alistair. That was when the truth finally appeared. Lucian wasn't the enemy. The person everyone blamed wasn't the person responsible. The night Lucian died, he wasn't fighting with his father about money. He was confronting him about the years of lies. Alistair had threatened him. The argument became physical. And Lucian fell down the stairs. A tragic accident. But Alistair used his influence to make sure everyone believed Lucian was reckless, careless, responsible for his own death. Cassian closed his eyes. All these years. He had believed his brother was just gone. But the truth was worse. His brother had died trying to protect him. Then Nadia entered the room. I didn't hear the front door open. She was simply standing there. The woman from the phone call. She looked about 40 years old, elegant, tired, like someone who had spent years carrying a secret. Cassian stared at her. Nadia. She smiled sadly. You remember my voice? How? Because I was there the day Lucian died. Nobody spoke. I saw what happened. Cassian stood. Why didn't you tell anyone? Nadia looked at Serafina. Nadia looked then at him. Because your mother begged me. Serafina started crying. I thought I was protecting you both. Nadia shook her head. No, we were protecting ourselves. That sentence hit everyone. Because it was true, everyone in that room had a weakness. Cassian's weakness was believing he could carry everyone's pain alone. Serafina's weakness was fear. Nadia's weakness was guilt. And mine was wanting a perfect family so badly that I ignored the cracks. I looked at Cassian. Did you know about Nadia? He shook his head. No. Did you know about your real father? No. Did you know about Lucian? His eyes filled with tears. I knew he died. A pause. But I never knew he died for me. That was the moment everything broke. Not with anger, not with screaming, just silence. Because sometimes the deepest pain comes when you realize someone loved you enough to sacrifice everything. Months later, the Vale family was never the same. The truth about Alistair's actions became public. The inheritance went to Cassian and Nadia, but neither of them cared about the money anymore. They created a foundation in Lucian's name, a way to remember the person who had spent his final moments trying to protect someone else. Serafina moved away from the old house. She said she needed a place where memories didn't feel like ghosts. And Cassian changed, not into a different person, into a more honest one. He learned that protecting someone doesn't mean hiding the truth from them. Sometimes love means trusting someone enough to handle the truth. A year after everything happened, I held my baby girl in my arms. Cassian sat beside me. He touched her tiny hand and smiled. What should we tell her when she's older? I looked at him. The truth. He nodded. All of it? I smiled. Especially the difficult parts. Because families aren't destroyed by secrets. They're destroyed when people believe love cannot survive honesty. And maybe that was the real secret the Vale family spent decades trying to hide. Not the inheritance, not the past, not the lies. The fact that the truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing that could finally set them free. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are not the ones who hate us. They are the ones who love us but are too afraid to be honest. A family is not built by hiding every painful chapter. It is built by having the courage to turn the page together. What would you have done if you discovered your husband's entire family had hidden a secret this big from you? Would you forgive them for protecting you? Or would the betrayal be impossible to forget? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how you would have handled the truth.